Stop imagining and start listening to commercial-free music from nearly every genre, coast to coast. Subscribe to SiriusXM, and your music stays with you wherever you hit the interstate or take the back roads. Call 844-711-8800 to activate your radio now.
There you go now.
I think I'm recording.
Oh, let's see. It's Christopher Mad Dog Russo. Hear the passion.
Be aggressive. Get something done.
Hear the knowledge.
The game, folks, is about two plays. That's what it comes down to.
Hear the personality.
I'm going to start here in an angry mood.
Get somebody on the radio that has made him a sports talk legend.
Does that make any sense to you? Guys, you're crazy.
It's Mad Dog Unleashed with Christopher Russo. Weekdays 3 p.m. Eastern on Mad Dog Sports Radio, Channel 82, or anytime on the SXM app. Free for most subscribers. To listen to Mad Dog Unleashed with Christopher Mad Dog Russo, activate your radio now. Call 844-711-8800 or go to SiriusXM.com/go to sign up quickly.
Did you know SiriusXM has over 100 extra channels on the SXM app filled with ad-free music made for everything you do? Mashup channels, workout channels, channels for parties, or just chilling out and more. Expertly curated for any mood, occasion, or activity. Extra channels let you discover new music and enjoy even more variety from every decade and music style you love. Plus, you can watch some of your favorite SiriusXM shows with SiriusXM Video. And you can do it all along with listening in your car as part of our music and entertainment plan. Right now, we're offering SiriusXM subscription plans for as low as $6 a month, plus fees and taxes. Call 844-711-8800 to find out more about these amazing offers.
Don't be a hard rock when you really are a gym, baby girl.
Celebrate 50 years of hip-hop with the female MCs who laid the foundation. The crowd is hyped up, and the ladies making history right now.
Looking at me like who bigger than she.
SiriusXM's Queens of Hip Hop is a channel dedicated to the women that rule the rap game.
Queen with a crown that be down for whatever.
Queens of Hip Hop.
Watch the queen count.
One of more than 200 extra channels available only in the SXM app. And hear it all week starting Tuesday. Channel 104.
When you're a SiriusXM subscriber, you've got access to commercial-free music, channels from almost every genre, and channels created in conjunction with the biggest names in music. Eminem's Shade 45, Pearl Jam Radio, Bruce Springsteen's E Street Radio, and more. Visit www.SiriusXM.com/go to sign up online quickly or call 844-711-8800 now. Activate your radio and start listening now.
That might be the greatest title fight in the history of the division.
The UFC is on SiriusXM Fight Nation. Get inside the octagon for all the UFC Fight Night cards on Channel 156. Plus, hear the preliminary bouts and pre- and post-fight commentary for UFC pay-per-view cards. The UFC is on your home for combat sports. SiriusXM Fight Nation, Channel 156, and on the SXM app.
To hear the UFC on SiriusXM Fight Nation, activate your radio by calling 844-711-8800 or visiting SiriusXM.com/go.
Did you know SiriusXM has over 100 extra channels on the SXM app filled with ad-free music made for everything you do? Mashup channels, workout channels, channels for parties, or just chilling out and more. Expertly curated for any mood, occasion, or activity. Extra channels let you discover new music and enjoy even more variety from every decade and music style you love. Plus, you can watch some of your favorite SiriusXM shows with SiriusXM Video. And you can do it all along with listening in your car as part of our music and entertainment plan. Right now, we're offering SiriusXM subscription plans for as low as $6 a month, plus fees and taxes. Call 844-711-8800 to find out more about these amazing offers.
Up front tonight, the breaking news.
Stay informed and engaged with the stories that shape our world with the SiriusXM News channels.
Border Patrol and ICE have had to limit
from cable news to business.
And so the markets need to be prepared for that and the volatility and for that.
And international.
The strength of values. It's the strength of real freedom.
The SiriusXM News channels starting at channel 112 and on the SXM app.
Get the SiriusXM app and listen on your phone when you get out of the car. Anywhere you take your phone, you can take Howard Stern, NFL Radio, and commercial-free music channels from nearly every genre. You never have to miss your favorite SiriusXM programs or commercial-free music. Find the SiriusXM app in the App Store or call 844-711-8800 or visit SiriusXM.com/app to find out more.
The newest research, the latest prescriptions, vaccines, and treatments, and how to get the care you need for yourself and for your family. From the heart of the NYU Langone Medical Center in New York City, SiriusXM's Doctor Radio has the world's top doctors on call for you, with specialists in everything from cardiology, oncology, public health, and men's and women's health, to psychology, pediatrics, allergies, nutrition, the ER, and more. With no waiting rooms, no referrals, and no copays. Doctor Radio, SiriusXM Channel 110.
To hear Dr. Radio, activate your radio now. Call 844-711-8800 or go to SiriusXM.com/go to sign up quickly.
Grande Deportes, bonjour, vidi vidi vici. Let's get ready to rumble. Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton of Big C Sports. This is Charlton of Big C Sports coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to me and people who love the universe, and that would include you too. What a beautiful day in the neighborhood. What a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Want to be my neighbor. Enough of that making noise. I tell you what, a beautiful day today, August the 18th, beautiful Friday. Happy Friday for everybody. Give Happy Friday some praise. You can follow Big C Sports on 28 podcast applications all over the universe, on Google, Alexa, Spotify, Speaker Podcast, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio Podcast, Castbox Podcast, Deezer Podcast, Podcast Addict, Podchaser. You can also follow us on Amazon. You can follow Big C Sports Podcast on YouTube, Hubhopper, Luminary Podcast, Geosvan Podcast out of London, England, as well as India and Africa. Podtail, Hubhopper, Stitcher Podcast, Radio Line, Repod Podcast, Luminary Podcast, Listen Notes, Podcast Wise, Podbay, Good Pods Podcast, Verbal Podcast, Podcast Prodigy, Podcast Republic, and I'm telling you, the one that used to scare me is allfees.ai. The robots are trying to take over. Give that some praise. I'm going to do something different today. I got a great person coming on. He's a president of Checkmate Sports, Edward Davis, and I talked to him just a long time ago, and then just recently this week. I love what he's doing. I'm going to take what's called the Big C pause. When I come back, we're going to hear from the president of Checkmate Sports. The good old boy is amazing. I'll take the Big C pause. And in the words of the great former governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. All right, this is Big C Sports back from the Big C pause, also known as the Big C timeout. You can follow Big C Sports Podcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on 28 podcast applications all over the universe, and streaming on 4 TV platforms at Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, and Amazon Fire TV. You know, in life, you get the chance to meet people in the sports world, and you realize it's a small world on this side of the business. I have the pleasure of having on the call today, he's the president of the company. It's called Checkmate Sports, and he has a slogan that says, in life, unlike chess, the game continues after checkmate. So Checkmate Sports, you can Google it. Checkmate Sports and Entertainment is a full-service athlete representation, marketing, and consulting firm. I want to go into a little bit of edification about Mr. Davis, the president of Checkmate Sports. I know many of you have heard of Stone Mountain, Georgia. I hear they have the best peaches in Georgia. Maybe we would challenge that with California peaches. I don't know. But this president, Mr. Davis, he obtained his undergraduate degree in physical education from Virginia State University, where he started as quarterback as a true freshman. And then he also had his master's in sports administration from Georgia State University in Atlanta. And then he pursued a career as an investor and financial planner after he obtained his Series 6 and Series 63 certification. At the same time, I want to touch on what drives this man. He's very accomplished and he's very motivated, but he's all about helping people. Mr. Davis, can I get you on the call today, sir?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I appreciate you. We've talked about a year ago and then just recently, earlier this week, and so I want to thank you for coming on to the program, the Big C Sports Podcast. Now, the movie Jerry Maguire That was Tom Cruise, Lee Steinberg, Cuba Gooding Jr., and I think Renee Zellweger about 2 decades ago. And I don't know if that motivated you, but that got me into looking at the world of sports representation. Tell us what started you in thinking about the world of sports representation.
Man, you know, to be honest, Jerry Maguire was a really good movie. I enjoyed it, but I never really thought it was obtainable.
Yes.
Until I saw Deion Sanders' Hall of Fame ceremony when the late Eugene Parker introduced Deion Sanders.
Yes.
And he was his agent.
Oh, really?
And I thought it was his dad. I thought it was his uncle or somebody, but no, that was his agent.
Wow.
And that was the first time it really clicked. It said, wow, this is possible. Somebody who looks like me is not only doing this, but doing it at the highest level.
You know, that's powerful.
That kind of triggered it. And then, so what you're saying also, and I want young people to listen. So, Mr. Davis, when you started, you didn't have someone that you grew up with going into their office, kind of learning the ropes like we do in an internship. You got motivated by seeing Deion Sanders, and if that makes sense to you? Yeah, seeing Eugene Parker was the kind of, it kind of planted the seed because I was still playing football at the time.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really thinking about life after football, but it kind of gave me an idea. It kind of planted that seed. Like, okay, wow, like when I'm done down the road, maybe I'll do that. But I really didn't think too much into it. And by the time, fast forward to when my career was over, that's when I started to think, what can I do? And it was either be a football coach or become a sports agent. And I ended up choosing becoming a sports agent, and the rest is history. But no, like you said, no, I didn't have a mentor because unfortunately at that time, Mr. Parker, he had passed away by that time.
Okay.
So there was no real. Rich Paul was coming up, but he hadn't really had that breakthrough yet. That's when they were still saying he was the entourage.
Yes.
So when I first came out, there was really no black agent that stood out.
Yes.
As of now, like now, they're all the rage. But when I first came out, it wasn't really like that. So I had to kind of just, make a way for myself.
Again, talking to Edward Davis, president of Checkmate Sports, a full financial representation company working with athletes, also has some great deals that are going with NIL, name, image, and likeness. I happen to actually interview the great Senator Stephen Bradford, who's authored NIL out here in California. But also, Mr. Davis, number one, I appreciate you again. So many times, as we know, football starting, and people say they want to come out of college, they want to get drafted, they want to earn a multi-million-dollar contract. But in order to get that NFL job, Mr. Davis, you have to make sure that a grown man becomes unemployed. Does that make sense?
Yes, I have to make sure that they get employed.
Well, in order to get a job, you got to put somebody out of a job because you're not guaranteed to make the team.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, that's the nature of the business. And so all I can hope is the guy who had the job, he made enough money to take care of himself.
Yeah.
But to let us in.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how the game goes. Only the best survives.
The best survives. So when it comes to that, also, Mr. Davis, when you do what you do for people and athletes, they could be guys who did not make it to the league, guys that retired, and they think, you know what, I want to stay in the business. And you have an opportunity with Checkmate Sports that keeps them in the business. You prepare and coordinate the budgets. You manage public outreach and personal brand development. So talk about how you take a person, maybe they didn't make the NFL, or they didn't make the CFL or whatever league, or they didn't make the NBA. If they come to you and they want to follow your yellow brick road, what are some of the steps you have them take so that they can realize what you're doing for a career now?
Well, the first thing I recommend people do is to take the 30-day Sports Agent Accelerator. And that is the Sports Agent Certification Program that we created that helps people to become sports marketing agents where they're able to represent professional athletes, college athletes, and high school athletes.
Yes.
Now, the good thing about that program is it allows them to do it in just under 30 days to get their license, and they're able to start representing guys and athletes as soon as 2 months. And so the great thing about that, we've been able to help so many people through that certification program that we was able to do over 100 NIL deals.
Wow.
And the reason why I said, I think that's the best way to go about it, because I tell people who pay attention.
Yes.
And when you invest in yourself into that program, it shows us that you're serious, and it shows that you are focused and ready to take the next steps.
That is amazing. We've heard, you said earlier, you mentioned the name Rich Paul. Obviously, Lee Steinberg has been around for many, many years, other top sports agents. So if you can just tell, growing up down in the South, football is really big. I think it's kind of a religion when you look at SEC football, where they play 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So people know you got to hit the weight room, you got to get bigger, stronger, and faster, and that's to make a team. What are some of the key ingredients, Mr. Davis, that a person should have, in your opinion, to become what you're doing right now, become a top sports agent, and to start finding representation? What are some of the things they got to work on when they're not in the weight room, if that makes sense to you?
All right, so if you're an athlete, the first thing you should be doing is control what you can control. Have good character. Be coachable, be a good person, work hard.
Yes.
All those things are, God doesn't have to give you that. You can do that on your own.
Yes.
And then once you got that in place, then you start to work on your skill set and everything else. Make sure that you become a student of the game.
Yes.
And a lifelong learner, and just keep grinding, because to make it to the top level is difficult.
It is difficult, yeah.
I mean, these guys are throwing out crazy checks, $100, $200 million checks, and they're not just giving that away because you want it bad.
I know I didn't hear you. I know I didn't hear you misspeak, but sometimes they say faith comes by hearing. What kind of checks did you say they're throwing? You say $5 checks, $10 checks, or what did I hear you say?
I said $200 million checks.
Okay, that gets the attention of a lot of people. And before one of those checks can get thrown out there are some exceptions. Some people we've known that have had their own representation. But the sports agent, as a viable career, you're in the middle between what you said, that $100 million, $200 million check. What kind of mindset that you have to go through to start dealing with people when that kind of money's on the line for them and their families?
So I think it comes down to really just preparation.
Yes.
Anxiety and being nervous and scared comes when you're not prepared.
Yes.
So before those $1 million moments and negotiations come up, make sure that you're doing the work, that you're studying, and that you're properly prepared. And that way, when the moment comes, it's second nature.
It's second nature. Yes.
Yeah, and then what comes with and a part of that preparation is just training your mind. You have to understand that we weren't taught to think about abundance and more.
Yes.
And excellence. We were taught to just survive and to, tolerate, what we had.
Right.
And to get that abundance, it takes, a different mindset. And a lot of times to change that mindset, you have to change your environment.
You're very well said about that. That's very well said. I want to ask you for a lot of the young people out there listening. You mentioned Deion Sanders earlier, and for African-American men, there has not been a lot of us in this industry prior to the past couple of years. When you ran across big-name athletes, people who are primetime television athletes, what was the perception of you before they got to really know who you are and how big-time you are? How do they perceive you being an agent as opposed to another athlete?
How do... the sports world?
Yeah, the sports world. How do they look at black men starting to, I won't say dominate yet, but starting to rise in the representation side?
I think it scares people.
Really?
Because you think about it, 70% of probably, I don't even know the exact number, but a lot of black people play football and basketball.
Yeah.
And I'm sure over 50-60%.
Yes.
And if that's the case, then imagine if 70 to 80% were black agents.
Wow. And that's powerful.
That's a great transfer of wealth.
That is you're a very smart man. I never looked at it that way because, as you mentioned, NFL players about 70-75% African American, NBA about 80% 50% African American. They're even getting more European players in. There's this thing that just got canceled by the Supreme Court called affirmative action. And at the same time, if you look at what you're doing, you got to know your stuff, whether it's affirmative action or not. You got to know your stuff. You got to be ready for it. And when you talk about the sea change, what if we do see a day, maybe in this decade, where 80% of the representation for black athletes happen to be black men or black women? Do you see that coming?
I definitely see it coming. With what the top black agents are doing right now, they're killing it in the industry. They're leading the way.
Yes.
And I think with what I'm doing with the sports agent certification program, that are allowing a lot of people that are minorities,
yes,
that come from different backgrounds, getting them the key to unlock the sports industry. I think that there's definitely going to be a new era of sports agents. No more, white guy, Italian suit, slick back hair.
Yes.
It's now going to be, men, women, not just white, but black, white, yes, Asian, and that's what it should be about. It should be about, the character and the skill set, the agent, not just, who your dad is.
You know what, Mr. Edward Davis, talking to Edward Davis, the president of Checkmate Sports. They're a full representation company, and you just said something that opened my mind, and I want to ask you just a few more questions because number one, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you because I know I read your story, and you had talked about how your wife was working a couple of jobs when you decided that you were going to pursue this career that you just said more and more black men and women are starting to get into because they realize the money's phenomenal. But if you can go back to the part where you were really not sure, and the people that loved you, they thought, are you really going down the right path? You have so many opportunities. Why you want to choose that opportunity where they really don't open the doors for people of color? Go back to that moment where you had to convince the people that loved you that you were actually doing the right thing, Mr. Davis.
I think, honestly, I learned at a young age that your vision is your vision.
Yes.
So you can't convince people. All you can do is show them.
Yes.
So I'm not in the business of convincing people to believe in me or my dream. My job is just to do it, and then, determine if I want them to experience that dream with me.
Yes, that's very well said. And for those of you, especially young people, because I'm inspired, Mr. Davis, by talking to you in a few minutes left. For people looking for a job or an internship, a career in the sports marketing agency, if you're interested in an internship or a job with Checkmate Sports and Entertainment, you can email your cover letter and resume to jobs@checkmatesport.net. That's jobs@checkmatesports.net. And say they're just graduating college, Mr. Davis, or they're doing something where they want to have a career change. The real estate market has a lot of salespeople. Whether they're insurance agents, they have a lot of salespeople. Is there a salesmanship that you need to know in order to become an agent, or is it totally different?
Well, you know what? I recommend people that if you want to get into this industry, skip the internship and invest in yourself.
Yes.
Because a lot of internships are just a bunch of grunt work.
Yep.
A lot of things that, they're going to be making you do things that don't really move the needle for you.
Yes.
And really just going to be things that they don't want to do.
Yes.
So if you want to skip that and get to the front of the line, then I recommend people go to www.nilsportsagent.com. And what that is what's going to allow them to sign up for the sports agent certification program.
Yes.
And there we can actually walk them to the front of the line, get them their license, get them their clients, and let them start negotiating NIL deals.
Mr. Davis, can you say that website one more time so that people can write it down if they were listening, please?
It's NILsportsagent.com.
Okay, perfect. I'm telling you, I really do appreciate your chance to come on to Big C Sports Podcast, and I'm in fact enrolled in your program, and I love what you are doing. I appreciate what you're doing, and there's this thing going on in the United States right now called Reparations, and they have a task force in California I'm a part of a group, National Black Wall Street Project, trying to get more people to be in business. But what you're doing is such a critical thing because sports is not shrinking. Even when people are having layoffs in the general economy, sports teams are not shrinking. In fact, sports are expanding around the globe, whether it's in Dubai or the United States or Canada or South America. So I want to ask you, and as we close, Mr. Davis, president of Checkmate Sports, what are some of the big goals that you have that you want to share with people that look at this industry as a possible way to feed their families? What can we expect to see you in the next 5 or 10 years, sir?
That's a good question. I see the sports betting market exploding. So I'm getting into the sports betting market. And then I also like digital marketing for college athletes. Athletes are the new influencers. They're going to be the new YouTubers, the new IG sensations, and they're going to need teams and professionals or people who can create those platforms and services for them as they're out on the field.
That is incredible. I'm talking to Everett Davis. He's the president of Checkmate Sports. They do full representation for people who want to get into the sports business. It's one thing to watch the game. It's one thing to root on your team. But to be in the game, all you got to do is find out by Checkmate Sports. And Mr. Everett Davis, the president, I thank you for coming on to Big C Sports Podcast. I wish you the very best this year. And based on what you're saying, I'm going to start focusing more on what's going on in the betting side of the sports business, too. This is Charlton Curry of Big C Sports. I want to say thank you to Mr. Everett Davis, the president of Checkmate Sports. Thank you, sir. I wish you nothing but the best.
All right. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Have a blessed day. That is Everett Davis, president of Checkmate Sports on Big C Sports Podcast. I'm going to take what's called the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout, and I'll be back in just a moment. All right, we're back from the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on 28 podcast applications on the universe. For TV platforms. Really do appreciate that. Just had the pleasure of speaking with the president of Checkmate Sports, a total sports representation and entertainment company, Everett Davis. What a great conversation having with him. And he talked about some things that I preach about on Big C Sports Podcast. Again, I want to appreciate Mr. Davis. Give him another round of applause for that. And for young people that are listening, especially people of color, we talk about affirmative action being struck down and about the Supreme Court. But Mr. Davis said, imagine a world where 80% of your sports representation are people of color. You don't need affirmative action to go through Checkmate Sports. You don't have to have that. Just Google checkmatesports.com or checkmatesports.net and you'll find an opportunity to get enrolled and become a sports marketing agent. Because the contracts that we hear about now, and just having on Jaylen Brown, his father, for the Boston Celtics, and Marcellus Brown, and Jaylen signed a $300+ million contract. Agents get a percentage of that money. We hear about Anthony Davis having a contract extension with the Los Angeles Lakers. Agents get an extension of that money. When Steph Curry signs a large contract, his agent gets an extension of that money. They get the money. When LeBron James signs a large contract, his agent gets an extension of that money. Patrick Mahomes, he signs a contract for the Kansas City Chiefs. His agent gets a percentage of that money. And I did a show on sports agents just earlier this week with Big C Sports, and that also is an avenue that I'm going to do because I've been pulled into it, and I really do appreciate it. It's like the stars have aligned, and the sky does seem bluer because of that non-series DNA. A lot of things are opening up, and I really thank God for that. Really do appreciate it. At the same time, I want to make sure that whatever I do with Big C Sports, I pay homage to what I'm doing also as a sports show. I'm the only sports podcaster on 28 podcast applications. You can Google it. And I thank Amazon for carrying the Big C Sports Podcast. I just came on to Amazon within this past week. But also talking about something that I'm championing with the National Black Wall Street Project, which is reparations. When I say reparations now, reparations forever. But not just waiting on reparations. There are a lot of things that people can do. I have some real estate contracts that are very, very lucrative. I've been a part of that for 20 years. I also have the Big C Sports Podcast that's growing leaps and bounds, and the popularity of it, and then having on some of the top sports agents in the United States of America on Big C Sports Podcast. I also want to pay homage to Janie Harr of the Associated Press. She did an interview with me on March 29th, 2023. And I want more professional athletes to listen to this, because she called me, Charlton Curry of Big C Sports, and she called me about reparations. And I love it with a passion, because we can do both. Just like president of Checkmate Sports, Edward Davis, talked about doing what makes him happy, having a passion for it, and not waiting for someone to believe your vision. You got to lead, follow, or get out of the way. But she interviewed Big C Sports. Of all the sports podcasters in the universe, she called Charlton and Big C Sports. I said, what makes you call me? She said, because you're not like the others. She said, you're different. And I know I'm not like the others, because when a lot of the others, they do whatever they got to do, and I don't knock anybody for what they're doing. Not everybody likes my style. But the fact that she interviewed Charlton Curry, also in an article with President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, California Governor Gavin Newsom, I really do appreciate that, and I give her praise. She didn't have to call me. She could have called somebody that you see on TV all the time. But I said Big C Sports will become a household name. You mark my words. By the end of this year, it will become a household name. And you can give that praise. I'm reaching out to some of the most well-known people in the world of sports. But on the backside of it, on the contractual side, I know people want to see us go touchdown, home run, three-point play. Oh, man, Willie, he's going all the way. But mark my words, Big C Sports Podcast will be the vanguard, or among the vanguard, of bringing more people of color into sports representation. And you can give that some praise, because it's coming. I'm not talking about affirmative action. I'm talking about having your action. Either lead, follow, or get out of the way. And don't worry about who likes you. Let God put people in your life. Give God praise, and let God bring people into your life. Don't chase people. Chase God, if that makes sense to you. And speaking of that, I want to pay homage before I get into some more sports. Again, thanking President of Checkmate Sports, the great Edward Davis. Really do appreciate him. He opened my eyes, and he opened my mind, and he said, imagine that more and more people of color have been making their own way in the world of sports. Sports is a billion-dollar industry. Boys and girls sports is the foundation to this billion-dollar industry. And a lot of times people get in because of cronyism or nepotism, and it hasn't always been an open door for us. But Edward Davis is doing his thing. They have over 100 NIL contracts through his agency. And you wouldn't have heard about him 20 years ago. Because most of the time people look at black men, even when I was in college, when people would meet me, they said, man, you play football? Because of my size, I had 6% body fat. I could bench press 400 pounds. I could run a 4.5 40. But even that, what if I had taken that same brain power and muscle power and focused on what Mr. Edward Davis is doing of Checkmate Sports? Imagine having 100 athletes signed under me, controlling over $1 billion in contracts. Because that's going to happen. I said Big C Sports will become a $1 billion company, and that's part of it. I'm going to control over $1 billion in contracts, because God is my source, and I have the connections from all over the world, from Dubai to the United States to Latin America. It's coming, and I want to give that some praise. I'm telling you, I just said this the other day. I had a dream where these robots, they were doing everything I asked them to do. You know what it's like when a man has a robot do what he says? Imagine how good that feels. What did Teddy Pendergrass say? He said it's so good having a robot do what you tell you and it doesn't talk back. Okay, he didn't say it that way. But he said it's so good loving somebody when somebody loves you back. You know, robots are more loyal than dogs. You feed a dog, that dog will show up every day. And that dog will do whatever you say, as long as you feed him. If you don't feed him, then all bets are off. But if you feed that dog shows up. Imagine feeding the robots. I kid you not, you couldn't plan this. I didn't pre-script this show with Edward Davis, president of Checkmate Sports. But I said just the other day, I think it was Wednesday, I had a dream that these robots, they were doing whatever I told them. And I said when I was I was 19 years old. I was in college. I met Barbie Eaton of I Dream of Jeannie, and she would always twinkle her nose, and it was Gene Hackman, or Larry Hackman, I believe. She called him Master. And whenever he asked her what to do, she would do it. She would just twinkle her nose. And I said I had a dream that these robots were doing everything I asked them to do. Now, I didn't have to twinkle my nose, but I used my voice. And I tell you, Edward Davis, he just dropped a nugget, president of Checkmate Sports. He talked about things that colleges and athletes are getting into, and that he's going to get into in the next decade. I asked him, what do you see yourself in the next decade? And he talked about some things that have to do with artificial intelligence, the robots. How did I know that? It's called an epiphany. I kid you not. I talked about it about 2 days ago. The dream with the robots. They were like stormtroopers in Star Wars. And they were doing everything I asked them to do. Because I know I'm going to become a billion-dollar company. I already know that without any doubt. And now to hear one of the top sports agents in the universe talk about the same thing. That means that God has put me on the right path or something, and I'm just going to give that praise. I want to always do this, too, because it's important to me. I want to thank the California Reparations Task Force, because reparations are coming for descendants of child slavery. I want to thank the chair, attorney, Camila Moore, brilliant. Dr. Amy C. Brown, vice chair, brilliant. The best senator in the United States, also responsible for name, image, and likeness. California Senator Stephen Bradford, brilliant. Councilmember Monica Montgomery Steppe, brilliant. Assembly member Reginald Jones Sawyer, brilliant. I want to thank Dr. Shell Grills, brilliant. Attorney Lisa Holder, brilliant. I want to thank Dr. Javon Scott Lewis, professor at California Berkeley, brilliant. And also Donald K. Tamaki, brilliant, of the California Reparations Task Force. I want to give that praise. I'm not like the other shows that may talk about them on one day and then you don't hear about them anymore. I want to make sure I do that all the time. And I want to make sure, because today's show is a little bit different, I really do appreciate having the president of Checkmate Sports, and the great Edward Davis, one of the top agents in the United States, and also responsible for helping more people of color get into the business. I want to give him some praise. I want to give him praise right along with the 1,100-page report provided, recommendations for lawmakers on reparations in California. There's so many great things coming right now. It's like the 9 Series DNA, the sky is much bluer. It goes back to what I like to say for most of my shows. There was a story in the Bible about the talents, where the master was leaving. It was in the parable of the talents in Matthew 25:14-30. And it told of a master who's leaving his house to travel. And before leaving, he entrusted his property to servants according to the abilities of each one. And one servant received 5 talents. I say that's like the top people you see on TV, you hear them on radio all the time. They got the programmers, the producers, the runners. Everybody brings the information to them. And then the second person received 2 talents. That's like the ancillary people in television. You hear about them, but they're not a household name, but they are in TV shows, etc. And then there's the one where God gave the 1 talent. I consider that myself like Big C Sports. Not because I'm not as talented, but sometimes you get one person, one goal, and they do what it takes 5 people to do on other platforms. Wow, Big C, there you go again. I'm telling you the truth. It's important. And I want to tell this to other people the same way president of Checkmate Sports, Edward Davis, said to me. You got to have your own dreams. You got to have your own beliefs. You can't worry about other people. And imagine the sea change that's going to happen for people of color when we realize that you got to count on yourself. Affirmative action was great. It helped people who were handicapped. It helped men and women try to equal the playing field. But at the end of the day, you got to count on yourself. Big C Sports is the only sports podcast in the universe. I produce my show. I direct the topics. I broadcast all the shows. I do all the sound effects based on the platform provided by the agency. I don't have somebody doing it for me. I do all the commercials. All of my commercials are done pre-show. I don't do an hour show with 4 pauses in between to run 3 or 4 commercials. I do them all up front. I just keep going and going and going and going. I keep getting Dr. Bunny. The stats are provided. I do the storytelling, facts tell and stories sell. I even do the play-by-play. Runners on first and third. The count's full. The pitch. Curveball. Swung on. Hit deep. Right field. Back to the wall. Home run. Say hello to my little friend. I love the saying the girls love the long ball and men love to hit deep. I do that as well. Then I upload the show. It goes out to 28 multiple podcast platforms out of New York City. And I'm in Dimdare Hills, California. 28 multiple podcast platforms. And the 28th one by Amazon was added in the month of August. There's going to be 30 platforms by Christmas. I already know that. Just finishing up the works to make that happen. And then I never missed a show since creating Big C Sports with the crew back at Salem Media. It's amazing how things happen. At Salem Media, my daughter set up the very first interview with Big C Sports. It became the first time in the history of the United States that NFL Monday Night Football started broadcasting live on the Wall Street Business Network. It had never happened before. Normally they would go to ESPN. But because of two black men in the crew, it actually scared some people. They would say, "Man, Curry, how do you do a show? Where your scripts?" We just talked. Like I didn't have a script talking to the president of Checkmate Sports, Edward Davis. We didn't have a script. We just talked. Had a conversation. I know something about his bio, and then I fed it to him, and he hit a home run with it. But the biggest home run he hit is when I asked him, "What do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?" And he talked about the robots that I had a dream about just about 2 days ago. I kid you not. How did I know he was going to talk about that stuff? And I've been saying that robots are taking over. It's called artificial intelligence. It can be a good or a bad thing. It's like an untrained dog. If you have an untrained dog, he's going to inculcate all over the carpet. He's going to inculcate all over the floor. You're going to be cleaning up behind that dog. I know because I had a dog like that. He would always just drop it where he wanted to drop it. And then we got him trained. And when we got him trained, then he went to the doggy door and he went outside and did the doggy dog stuff, if that makes sense to you. But the robots, I'm telling you people, robots are going to, whether it's good or bad, the robots are here and they're not leaving. We either got to lead, follow, or get out of the way. I want to pay homage to our Veteran Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. If you know anybody going through issues, pick up the phone. Call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net. And when you do, you want to give them some praise because we all need somebody to lean on. I know I do, and it's so good leaning on somebody when somebody's leaning back. I want to say thank you to Xfinity, Comcast TV, and Comcast Spotlight Effect TV for presenting Big C Sports to the universe. Just like in Genesis 1:3, where God said, reparations now, reparations forever. And then he said, let there be light. Let there be light. And God, do it now in Jesus' name. I was talking to a pastor friend of mine, and he kept saying, add in Jesus' name after you pray, and it makes things happen faster. So that's what I'm going to start doing, so also in Jesus' name. But I really do appreciate that. And I just love the fact that with Big C Sports Podcast, I can bring on the president of one of the top sports agencies that's growing in the United States for people of color. Checkmate Sports. There's a time when you got to lead, follow, get out of the way. And Edward Davis is a leader. He talked about being, I guess, having his curiosity expanded when Deion Sanders was being represented by an agent. Even though the movie Jerry Maguire had Cuba Gooding Jr., Tom Cruise, and a lot of people think about that movie when it comes to sports representation. Lee Steinberg, Renee Zellweger. But Edward Davis talked about the agent that represented Deion Sanders that opened up his mind and made him realize that he can do it too. And that's why CheckmateSports.net, I want to just encourage people. Checkmate Sports and Entertainment, they're a full-service athlete representation, marketing, and consulting firm. Intelligent black man. Imagine where he's growing. As smart as he is, he has his Series 6 and 63 certifications, through FINRA, but he's also getting into the robots. Because the robots, they don't sleep. Give my sleepers some praise. There are times when I've been on a mission to accomplish something, I wouldn't sleep for 2 days. And then I would get to the point where I just couldn't stay up and I'd fall asleep. And I feel that way about sports. I can do this with my eyes closed because I love it. Like that 9 Series DNA, I love it. I want to also pay homage to my beautiful son, Malcolm. Going to be a senior this year, college student and graduate. I love you with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. Malcolm taught me I used to always get the newspaper to look up stats on players and teams for Big C Sports Podcast. And one day Malcolm said, Dad, why don't you just Google it? And a light bulb went off. I've been Googling ever since. But just like what Eric Davis said, president of Checkmate Sports, one day Malcolm said, Dad, do you want to see Big C Sports on TV? I said, sure. He said, pick up the remote, aim it at the TV, and say, play Big C Sports, and you'll see your show come up. He said that before it was even on the air. Within a short period of time, like I told you, I had a dream about those robots. They were doing everything I told them to do. And they made me a fortune. Within a short period of time, Big C Sports was on television. Xfinity, Comcast TV, Apple TV, Roku TV, and Amazon Fire TV. Give that praise. He spoke it before he saw it. We got to see things in our mind's eye before we see it physically. Maybe that's just the way God works. If you don't have faith, God don't need you. That's why I say stay away from negative people. Only be around people who lift you up, even if it's only the person in the mirror. Don't let people tear down your dreams. You already got what you want in God's eye anyway. That's why God gave you the power, if that makes sense to you. I really do appreciate it. I love praising my mother, my mother's side of the family. And I'm the only sports podcaster that does this because I have the latitude. And I pay homage to my ancestry. Just like reparations. Reparations now, reparations forever. Pays homage to our ancestry also. My mother's side, my great-grandmother called her Mama, beautiful, loving, kind woman. You guys know what I mean when great-grandma was in the kitchen and she was tearing up that kitchen to get you something to eat. Always making sure lots of love in the family and lots of food in the belly. Then my beautiful grandfather called him Pop, former military man and former Negro League baseball player, known around his church buddies of making the best moonshine in the history of the universe. Ever seen boys get out of that barn now? Love Pop can fix anything, planes, trains, and automobiles. Then my beautiful grandmother called her Mud Deer, beautiful, loving, kind woman. Really do appreciate her. A seer can oftentimes look at a person and tell you about their past, present, and future. She still helps me to this day. And then my grandfather Hezekiah, another wonderful person, a seer, can oftentimes look at a person and tell you a lot about their past, present, and their future. And then I can always depend on my mama, the most beautiful mama in the history of the universe. Always saying, baby, just pray, pray, pray. Always trust God. The best person I ever met in my life. Started a Head Start program, a food program, and then coached an all-boys, a Little League baseball team to the championship of the universe. Really do appreciate Mama. At the church, everybody wanted Mrs. Curry's cooking. At a restaurant, everybody wanted Mrs. Curry's cooking. And at home, everybody wanted Mama's cooking. She says, son, how many plates have you had? And I say, plates are baby crap to what I'm looking for. I'm looking for my reparations. And I thought that was funny most of the time, and so did she, thank God. But I love my mama with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. The best person I ever met in my life. On my father's side, my grandfather, Albert Curry, had 2 gas stations. Actually, he ran 2 churches in Oakland. He had a 3rd church he built in Central California, but he also owned 2 gas stations in Oakland, one on Bancroft, the other on Foothill. But just like the Emancipation Proclamation, President Abraham Lincoln promised black men, the soldiers, 40 acres and a mule if they helped the Union win the Civil War. My granddaddy owned 40 acres of land. And now his grandson is talking about reparations and 40 acres. You got to give that some praise. And my beautiful grandmother, Alberta Curry, looking side by side with my grandfather with the 2 churches in Oakland and building the 3rd church in Central California and then helping with the 2 gas stations. She touched me on my forehead when I was 8 years old. I was walking through a hallway in Oakland. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And I said, what's she doing up at 10 o'clock at night? She normally goes to bed at 8:30. She said, what are you doing, young man, going to get some more cookies? And I said, cookies are baby crap to what I'm doing. I'm going to get my reparations. I knew about reparations when I was an 8-year-old boy because I grew up around grown folks. And they talked about those things. You know who's gotten his reparations? The president of Checkmate Sports. Edward Davis. He talked about representing athletes with a contract of $100 to $200 million. Imagine the sea change for young black men. Just like our white brethren. Almost everywhere I've gone in media, I was the only black person there. And most of my white brethren that I met in media, they got the job through nepotism and cronyism. I would have to get contracted to cover NFL games and college games. Usually it was just a week at a time. But some of my white friends, they would say, hey, Curry, you working the game next week? And I said, I don't know yet. I put in my request, and I asked for the whole season, but he said, I got to let you know week by week. He said, really? They signed me for the whole year. And I knew more than him. But he was white. Oh, there you go again, that racism. It's a fact. When I was flown to the Super Bowl by NBC Sports, it was Green Bay versus Denver down in San Diego. David Gibson was the broadcast producer for NBC, and he said, you do a good job, my man. I'm going to put in the work for you to work the Super Bowl. And they flew me down from the Bay Area. I was like one of two black people in the whole truck. I'll never forget that. And I realized how God has given me a platform. And I'm opening up my platform to let more people in. Because I realized from Dubai to Africa to the United States to Latin America, I've had people call into the Big C Sports Podcast. Give that praise. It's amazing how many times people say, I've heard you before. I know who you are, Cape Verde, with the Olympics. They were playing Big C Sports Podcast at the Olympic Games. How do I know that? Because I talked to August Wesley. He's the coach of the wrestling team. He was just on the program earlier this week. So God opens doors. It's not about people. It's about getting on your knees and asking the Alpha, the Omega, the Ancient of Days, and giving God praise. I want to keep doing that. I want to always do that. And I want to praise my father, former United States Air Force fighter pilot, chief mechanic, always making sure that airplanes can fly high so we can all stay safe at night. Always saying develop your mind to a size extent. Now, how did the universe work it out this way? In the Air Force, my father's roommate was the late Al Freeman Jr., who played the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in one of my favorite movies, Malcolm X, that was written and produced by the great Spike Lee. And acted by my favorite actor, the great Denzel Washington. How did God do that? Because this stuff has existed before I was even born. It's important. It's lined up. It's coming full circle. And I thank God for it. I want to give God praise. My dad always saying, develop your mind to its highest extent. Love my dad with all my heart, mind, body, and soul. My beautiful brother Todd with that bombastic voice, sound like thunder and lightning. The top of the Reparations reader, always talking about politics and sports and religion. I'm just so grateful for Big C Sports. I really do appreciate President of Checkmate Sports, Edward Davis, another brilliant, intelligent black man. Instead of waiting for someone to open the door, what are we gonna do now? They didn't kill the affirmative action. What are we gonna do now? You're gonna get on your knees. You're gonna pray. You're gonna give God some praise. And you either leave, you either fall, or get out of the way. But quit looking for validation from other people. God gave you the dream, and that's what I'm saying. With Big C, mark my words. Oh, there you go, talking about things before they happen, Big C. You're gonna look like a fool if it don't happen. Big C Sports will become a household name. It's going to happen within the year. In fact, it already is. I just don't do advertising on other platforms. And one of the producers I called at Salem Media to do an advertisement with, his numbers are no longer working. But I'm growing and I'm expanding. And I appreciate Checkmate Sports and some brilliant people who are behind the scenes making things happen. I want to give that praise. Mr. Davis, really do appreciate you. And something he said that's important. You got to know the answers. Fear comes from not being prepared. I can do this show with my eyes closed. I'm not bragging, but it's true. Oftentimes I don't sleep. I talk in my sleep. I was doing a show before I had a show. And now Big C Sports Podcast is interviewing some of the top sports agents in the universe. Don't worry about people that say you can't do it. You just believe in yourself and give God the praise. A lot of NFL football coming up. Tonight and over the weekend. Tonight, Carolina at the New York Giants already underway. Kickoff was 4 o'clock p.m. on NFL Network. Cincinnati Bengals at the Atlanta Falcons. Kickoff at 4:30 p.m. On Saturday, got a large slate of games in the NFL for Saturday, August 19th, 2023. The day that I call Todd's Day because he loves football. Jacksonville at Detroit, 10 a.m. kickoff on NFL Network. Miami at Houston, 1 o'clock p.m. kickoff on NFL Network. Buffalo at Pittsburgh, 3:30 p.m. kickoff. You got Chicago at Indiana at 4 o'clock p.m. kickoff on NFL Network. And then Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New York Jets of 4:30 p.m. kickoff. The New England Patriots at the Green Bay Packers of 5 p.m. kickoff. Tennessee Titans at the Minnesota Vikings of 5 p.m. kickoff. Kansas City Chiefs, the defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs at the Arizona Cardinals of 5 p.m. kickoff in the desert. You got the Denver Broncos in Denver Hills, California, taking on the San Francisco 49ers. It's a 5:30 p.m. kickoff from Levi Stadium. And then the Las Vegas Raiders at the Los Angeles Rams at 6 o'clock p.m. kickoff. How about those Cowboys? The Dallas Cowboys up on the Pacific Northwest at Seattle, taking on the Seattle Seahawks at Lumen Field, 7 o'clock p.m. kickoff on the NFL Network. And then got a game Sunday, the New Orleans. They are going to be playing at the Los Angeles Chargers. So the Raiders taking on the Rams in Los Angeles. And then the next day, New Orleans takes on the LA Chargers. So give that some praise for the good old boys playing NFL football. I know there's a lot of great things happening in this beautiful country when it comes to sports. We don't have a lot of time to sit back and shuck and jive because baseball's chasing that search for the what they call a hunt for Red October. That was a movie. But they're chasing division championships. Baseball's in the swing of things. And then we have NBA basketball. That schedule came out just yesterday. So there's a lot of good old boys getting ready to run up and down the court in the NBA. And we know football is the king. High school football kicks off tonight in some places around the country. Number one in the country is Santa Ana Mater Dei. They're Big C's number one team. They won 2 of the last 4 national championships. And so I'll be bringing up Big C's Friday Night Lights coming up next week when I preview the top 10 high school football programs on Big C's Friday Night Lights for Big C Sports. Also, we got some college football. They're about to kick off coming up on the 2023 season. And then there's, of course, NFL's King of the Jungle. Really do appreciate that. Before I close, I have a solution. It's just a thought. It's for the Pac-12 conference. With the collapse of the Pac-12, how about starting a California conference? You got Cal and Stanford, and they're trying to run to the ACC where they don't even want to split TV money with you. How about expand your horizons like the great Edward Davis of Checkmate Sports? Instead of begging someone to work for their agency, he created his own agency. Like Big C Sports, instead of begging someone for an opportunity with their platform, I created my own platform. But you got programs in California that could expand. You got Fresno State. You got Sacramento State, San Diego State, San Jose State, UC Davis, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, University of San Diego. They can join with Cal and Stanford and even Washington State and Oregon State and make it the California Conference or the West Coast Conference or the California Western Conference and share the TV revenue. That makes more sense than begging some good old boys from the ACC to join their conference and not getting any revenue from it. Give that some praise to water your own backyard if that makes sense to you. Well, that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. I want to thank again the president, Big C Sports special guest, president of Checkmate Sports, the great Edward Davis. Really do appreciate you coming on. Well, as I always tell you, if you're going to drink, don't drive. If you're going to drive, don't drink. Because mothers against drunk drivers are mad, and fathers against drunk drivers are mad. You can call an Uber, you can call Lyft, you can call a cab, you can walk it off, you can sleep it off. It's one of the easiest things not to do. Don't let someone you love go drinking and driving. The life you save may be your own. And that's real talk. Too many people do it. Just know your limits. Give yourself time before you get behind the wheel of the car. That's my story, and and I'm sticking with it. Well, as I always tell you, back in the day, there's a man known by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, you float like a butterfly, and you sting like a bee. Rumble, young man, rumble. He said, with all you've got to use, how can you lose? Ali would say, I'm so pretty, I can't possibly be beat, because all these Big C burgers make me out of my feet, and that's why I float like a butterfly, and I sting like a bee. And that's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Well, as I always tell you, my mother always says there's never ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. No man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. If you know anybody going through that garbage, pick up the phone and call 911, because things change when the police show up. No man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. Well, as I always tell you, on every Big C Sports Show, I thank you, I appreciate you, and I hope that you have a super fantastic day. And what I always do, as I honor President Abraham Lincoln, I say reparations now, reparations forever. Say it with me if you want to respect President Abraham Lincoln and what he stood for. Reparations now, reparations forever. Say it one more time as if your team just won the game. Reparations now, reparations forever. I thank you, I appreciate you, and I hope that you have a super fantastic day.